I asked some of the greatest guitar players in the world, what is the hardest part of learning the guitar?
Chords. With my background, I started playing violin at such a young age that the single note stuff really translated. Even when I was first kind of presented with the idea of open chords, it's like, wait, I have to memorize all these different shapes? All of these are a different name? And then I think also with myself and with students, it's like bar chords were baffling. And it was really kind of learning about caged and how it all fits together there that started to put the pieces together. But for me, it was chords, without a doubt.
I think that the patience part of it, I don't think it's really hard to learn, but having the patience for certain things, knowing that even if I practice this for an hour today, I'm not going to have it by tomorrow. Understanding that certain things are like a slow burn. It'll be over time. Patience.
Well, I just talked about this in a recent YouTube video, but honestly, I would say just kind of getting out of your own way and not beating yourself up too much in the beginning, and in general, the process of developing your ear, your musical ear.
I think it depends what stage you're at, but initially it's physical, and then I think it's probably maintaining positive forward motion. So being able to keep yourself motivated, I think, is probably the hardest thing, because it's a difficult thing to do. So finding a way to keep yourself motivated, basically, I think is the hardest thing. Yeah, so initially it's physical, obviously the fingers hurt, and then when you get past that initial stage, you have lots of growth, then it plateaus. Then to push through those plateaus is probably the hardest thing, because everything else is just time and effort, basically, but the plateaus are hard to push through. So those are the things that have stopped me in the past, I think, the most.
I would say getting over like the initial phase of not being able to play anything that you're hearing in your head. You know, that might be the hardest part, because it's not, you kind of have to just like be working towards this goal, and that period might not be super inspiring. Once you can kind of start to see some progress and play things that you like, whether it be songs or whatever, then that can sometimes be enough fuel to keep you going forward.
The most difficult part of learning the guitar is there's an average of 9.2 different fingerings for every note on the guitar.
Putting in the time, realizing that it's absolutely just about doing the work. There's no magic. Now, some people have some extra fairy dust, they do, they just do, but 99% of it is just doing the work. That's it. And I struggle with it all the time. You play with somebody and they've got some stuff together and you're like, yeah, I just got to practice more, period. That's it. Like anybody who's good at anything, as the old expression goes, if it were simple, everyone could do it, so practice. That's it.
Well, I guess for me, I get interested in so many different things all at once. The hard part for me is to concentrate on just one thing at a time, because it's very, very common for me to be like into gypsy jazz at the same time I'm into like neoclassical shredding and stuff, and you have to be in two different headspaces really to delve deep into something, to a particular style or technique, so to speak. For me, I'm just like all over the place when it comes to things that I like and like to listen to and like to play. So that's the hardest part for me.
For me was like building callus and like muscle fatigue on my fingers and getting, all the bar chords to sound clearly and stuff like that. I feel like once I nailed that, it was a lot easier. Definitely another one of the most difficult things that I still struggle with today is that my fingers don't always do what my brain wants them to do. Like I see dudes playing so incredibly fast and I try to do it, I'm just like, yeah, my hands just don't work that way. So accepting like your limitations, but still working towards exceeding them.
For me, technique was harder. Now I'll say it from a teacher's standpoint, the hardest thing to teach other people, I feel like, is rhythm. I don't think memorizing the notes on the fretboard is that hard, but people usually get that it's too boring for a lot of people and they don't want to do it. But if they actually did it, it wouldn't take that long and it's not that hard. I don't even fully feel I understand rhythm either. So, when somebody asks me to teach it to them, I'm like, okay, well, I'll do the best I can. And a lot of, like, sometimes you try to, like, explain it with, like, literal notation and be like, oh, you're on the E of 4. And most people, like, it's more like a sentence they got to memorize. Like, they're not going to absorb it with all the technical talk. You just want to get them to memorize what the sound of that rhythm is.
Time, feel, playing in time. It's something that I think it's a skill. It's a muscle that you develop, and like a muscle, I think it can atrophy if you don't. Specifically in terms of playing with people, playing in a group setting. I think time feel is the most difficult. And I think it's easier for some people, harder for others, but I think anyone just about can develop good time feel, which arguably I think is the most important part of playing any instrument.
The most difficult part about learning the guitar is not getting caught up in the idea of traps of shapes, right? So guitar wasn't my first instrument, mandolin was. So when I came over, I was trying to apply, things that I could play into the guitar, and I wasn't looking at shapes. And then I discovered that there were all these ideas of cage systems, this, that, and the other. And what it ends up happening is that you end up having hot and cold spots throughout the neck of the guitar. And ideally, you want to be thinking intervallically to where no matter what instrument you're playing, the instrument is just a vehicle, right? So if you understand intervals, you can go pick up a banjo and pluck something out, or whatever, walk over to a keyboard and poke out a melody, right? You're understanding chord tones in the bigger picture and not being like, well, this is the shape that, the tab says. I think that's the hardest thing, is getting over that wall.